Admiral Krell strode across the immaculate bridge of the Thranxian flagship Voidrender, his six appendages clicking rhythmically against the polished obsidian floor. The ship represented the pinnacle of Thranxian engineering, a vast city-sized vessel capable of rendering entire moons to dust. Its sleek, dark hull absorbed rather than reflected light, giving it the appearance of a moving void against the backdrop of stars. What primitive rock have we found now? Krell's mandibles clicked with barely concealed disdain as he addressed the science officer standing rigidly before him. System designation 45721B, Admiral. Third planet from an unremarkable G-type star, reported Science Officer Tlaxi, her exoskeleton gleaming under the ambient blue lighting of the bridge. The inhabitants call it Earth. Krell's compound eyes studied the holographic display, showing a blue-green world spinning slowly. And what makes this backwater worthy of the Empire's attention? Several anomalies, Admiral, Tlaxi replied, manipulating controls with her secondary limbs to enhance various sections of the display. The species has only recently achieved rudimentary space travel. Orbital stations, a small base on their moon, preliminary colonies on their neighboring planet. However, their technological advancement curve is unusually steep, meaning they've progressed from primitive combustion engines to early quantum computing in less than 2 of their centuries. Our predictive models suggest they could achieve interstellar capabilities within 50 years. Krell made a dismissive gesture. Many species show brief periods of innovation before plateauing or destroying themselves. What else? Their social structure is unusual. Tlaxi seemed to choose her words carefully. Unlike most developing species, they maintain a dual-gender leadership model even into their technological phase. Females occupy significant positions in science, military, and governance structures. Krell's antennae twitched with interest for the first time. In most species the Thranxian Empire had encountered, one gender typically dominated the other completely by the time technological development began, with the physically stronger variant usually subjugating the weaker. Dual-gender power sharing was considered inefficient and unstable by Thranxian sociologists. That is curious, Krell admitted. And their military capability? Negligible by our standards, Admiral. Primitive nuclear weapons, chemical propellants, no energy shielding. They would pose no threat to even our smallest scout vessels. Krell clicked his mandibles in thought, his massive frame casting a long shadow across the tactical display. The Thranxian Empire had grown stagnant in the last millennium. Their technological superiority over neighboring star systems had bred complacency. No worthy adversaries meant no impetus for innovation. The Voidrender itself, while impressive, was based on designs centuries old. Perhaps, Krell said finally, these humans merit closer study. Their unusual social structure may provide insights for the Imperial Academy, and their rapid development curve suggests useful genetic material. You wish to establish diplomatic contact? Tlaxi seemed surprised. Krell emitted the Thranxian equivalent of a laugh, a harsh, rattling sound. Diplomacy is for equals, Science Officer. No, I propose a simple collection mission. Gather representative specimens of their female leadership for study. Their disappearance will be too isolated to trigger planetary awareness of our presence. Tlaxi hesitated, a dangerous action in the presence of an admiral. The Galactic Compact does specify protocols for first contact with pre-interstellar species, Admiral. Krell's massive form seemed to expand with indignation. The Compact is a bureaucratic constraint imposed by politicians who have never ventured beyond the core worlds. Out here, science and exploration require flexibility. His voice dropped to a dangerous tone. Are you questioning my authority, Science Officer? No, Admiral, Tlaxi replied quickly, her antennae flattening in submission. I will prepare the collection parameters immediately. Excellent. Focus on specimens with exceptional attributes. A military commander, a scientific authority, a political figure, and perhaps a technological innovator. for should provide adequate study material while remaining below detection thresholds. As Tlaxi departed to prepare the mission, Krell turned back to the holographic display of Earth. Such a small, insignificant world, yet he felt a strange anticipation. The Thranxian Empire had not faced a true challenge in generations. Perhaps these humans, with their unusual characteristics, would provide some momentary diversion before inevitably taking their place among the countless species that existed merely to serve the greater glory of Thranxia. How wrong he would prove to be. The collection operation was executed with typical Thranxian efficiency. 4 stealth insertion vessels, each barely larger than a terrestrial automobile, descended through Earth's atmosphere. Their advanced cloaking technology rendered them invisible to Earth's primitive radar systems and even to the naked eye. In Geneva, Switzerland, Dr. Eris Thorne was working late in her laboratory at the International Genetic Research Institute. At 42, she was the world's leading expert on CRISPR gene editing technology and had recently made breakthroughs in targeted immune response that promised to revolutionize cancer treatment. When the lights in her lab flickered momentarily, she assumed it was just another power fluctuation from the particle accelerator in the building's lower levels. She never saw the 3 Thranxian soldiers who materialized behind her. A soft hiss was all she heard before unconsciousness took her. In Moscow, Major Eva Rostova was conducting a night training exercise with her elite fighter squadron. At 35, she was already legendary within Russian military circles. An ace pilot with unmatched tactical instincts who had been fast-tracked to command the nation's most advanced Sukhoi Su-75 stealth fighters. When ground control reported an anomalous radar signature, she broke formation to investigate personally. Her last transmission noted only strange atmospheric distortion at 3 o'clock, before her fighter's systems went dark. Russian radar operators watched in confusion as her aircraft maintained a steady course back toward the base, seemingly on autopilot, the pilot no longer responding to communications. Inside the cockpit, Eva's unconscious form had been replaced with a holographic projection, while her actual body was already being transported to a Thranxian vessel in low orbit. In Washington, D.C., Lena Hansen, the 26-year-old daughter of the U.S. Secretary of State, disappeared from her Georgetown apartment without a trace. A political science prodigy and diplomatic aide to her mother, she had been involved in drafting several historic international treaties. Security cameras showed nothing unusual, only a brief power outage. When service was restored, her apartment was empty, the only sign of disturbance a half-finished cup of tea on her desk. And in Bangalore, India, Dr. Kinza Sharma, a 31-year-old artificial intelligence pioneer whose neural network architecture had revolutionized machine learning, simply vanished while walking between buildings on her corporate campus. Security footage showed her walking into a shadow between 2 buildings and never emerging from the other side. For women, for continents, for disappearances that initially seemed unrelated. Within 24 hours, the world's intelligence agencies were buzzing with uncertain reports. The simultaneous disappearance of high-profile women from secure locations triggered immediate suspicion of an orchestrated attack, but with no clear perpetrator or motive. Nations initially pointed fingers at each other. Russia accused the United States of extracting Rostova for her military knowledge. The U.S. suspected Chinese involvement in Lena Hansen's disappearance. India questioned Pakistani motives in Dr. Sharma's case. But as intelligence agencies compared notes, disturbing commonalities emerged. In each case, electronic systems had experienced brief but unprecedented failures. More alarmingly, in each location, trace radiation signatures had been detected that matched no known terrestrial source. 3 days after the disappearances, a Japanese weather satellite captured an image that would change humanity's understanding of its place in the universe. The photograph, taken during a routine pass over the Pacific, showed a distortion in the upper atmosphere, a ripple that, when enhanced and analyzed, revealed the partial outline of an enormous object that should not have been there. The 4 women awakened in separate chambers aboard the Void Render, each surrounded by strange technology and observed by curious Thranxian scientists. Their initial reactions, fear, confusion, anger, were meticulously recorded and analyzed. None had ever imagined the possibility of insectoid aliens over 7 feet tall with exoskeletons and compound eyes. Dr. Eris Thorne was the first to master her fear. As a scientist, her analytical mind quickly moved from terror to observation. The Thranxians, seemingly impressed by her composure, began simple communication attempts. Within days, thanks to advanced Thranxian language acquisition technology and her own brilliant mind, she was able to understand basic concepts. She learned they were specimens collected for study by an advanced empire that considered humans a primitive but interesting species. Major Rostova took a different approach. Her military training kicked in immediately as she began systematically testing the limits of her confinement, probing for weaknesses in Thranxian security protocols, and memorizing the patterns of guards and scientists. While she feigned greater difficulty with the language than she actually experienced, she absorbed everything she could about Thranxian technology, particularly their weapons and defense systems. Lena Hansen, drawing on her diplomatic background, adopted a strategy of engagement. She appeared cooperative, curious, and non-threatening. Her questions, seemingly innocent, were carefully designed to elicit information about Thranxian society, hierarchy, and potential divisions within their ranks. She quickly identified differences in behavior between military and scientific personnel, noting that some of the younger scientists seemed almost sympathetic to the human situation. Dr. Sharma, meanwhile, focused intensely on the Thranxian computer systems. Her incredible aptitude for pattern recognition allowed her to begin deciphering their computational logic from mere observation. She noticed that despite their advanced technology, certain aspects of their systems seemed surprisingly rigid and outdated, as though innovation had stalled. All 4 women, though kept in separate quarters, began leaving subtle markers for each other, arrangements of food items, patterns tapped on surfaces during examinations, deliberate linguistic choices when speaking to their captors. Slowly, without direct communication, they established a rudimentary means of sharing information. What none of them realized was that Admiral Krell was watching all of this with growing interest. The humans were adapting far more quickly than anticipated. Their problem-solving abilities under stress were remarkable. Perhaps, he thought, these specimens were more valuable than he had initially believed. Back on Earth, humanity was undergoing its own transformation. The satellite image of the unidentified object above the Pacific sparked immediate global concern. When correlation with the 4 high-profile disappearances was established, fear turned to outrage. Emergency sessions of the United Nations Security Council were convened. Military forces worldwide were placed on high alert. Then came the breakthrough. A young astrophysicist at the European Space Agency, analyzing data from multiple sources, identified a pattern of subtle gravitational anomalies in orbit around Saturn. Whatever had appeared briefly over the Pacific was now hiding in the rings of the 6th planet, a location that would provide excellent camouflage while maintaining observational capacity over Earth. 2 weeks after the disappearances, representatives from every nation gathered for an unprecedented summit in New York. Old enmities were set aside in the face of what was now clearly an extraterrestrial incursion. The evidence was irrefutable. Humanity was not alone, and its first contact with alien intelligence had been hostile. We face an adversary of unknown capabilities and intentions, declared the UN Secretary-General to the assembled leaders. They have taken our people, our scientists, our soldiers, our daughters. They believe us weak, divided, primitive. We must show them otherwise. In a historic unanimous vote, the Earth Defense Force was established, a unified military and scientific body drawing resources and personnel from all nations. General Alistair Vance, a respected NATO commander with a background in both military strategy and astrophysics, was appointed as its first supreme commander. "We don't know who they are or why they've taken our people," Vance stated in his acceptance speech, "but we know where they are now. And we will not rest until our people are returned and Earth's security is assured. The most ambitious human undertaking in history began under the codename Project Chimera. Massive resources were redirected to space technology, weapons development, and the analysis of the limited data available on the alien presence. Military space programs previously kept secret were brought into the open and expanded. Private aerospace companies were nationalized and integrated into the EDF structure. A crucial early discovery came from the recovery of Major Rostova's fighter jet. The aircraft had indeed returned to base on autopilot, but detailed analysis revealed microscopic traces of unknown metals and radiation patterns. When similar signatures were detected in the other abduction sites, scientists had their first physical evidence of the aliens' technology. They're advanced, but not infallible, noted Dr. Wei Chun, the EDF's chief scientific officer. Their stealth technology leaves traces, quantum disturbances that we can track if we know what to look for. And if we can track it, eventually we can counter it. Project Chimera proceeded on 3 parallel tracks. The first focused on detection, developing sensors capable of piercing the aliens' cloaking technology. The second concentrated on propulsion, accelerating humanity's space capabilities to reach Saturn quickly with meaningful military force. The third and most secret component dealt with weaponry, how to fight an enemy whose defensive capabilities were still largely unknown. 6 months after the abductions, the first prototype of a quantum-enhanced detection system successfully identified a cloaked alien probe in Earth orbit. Instead of destroying or capturing it, the EDF allowed it to continue its observation, now feeding it subtly manipulated information. Let the aliens believe humanity was still ignorant and disorganized, while in reality, the greatest unified effort in human history was underway. Aboard the Void Render, the 4 captive women had developed their resistance further. Through careful observation and incremental testing, they had identified critical weaknesses in Thranxian systems and psychology. Dr. Thorne had made a pivotal discovery. Thranxian biology, despite its alien nature, shared certain fundamental cellular mechanisms with Earth life. Their immune systems, while robust against known pathogens, had never been exposed to Earth microbiota. More importantly, she identified a vulnerability in their communication technology. The Thranxians used a form of semi-biological computing that interfaced directly with their nervous systems. This offered incredible efficiency, but created potential vulnerability to bioelectronic disruption. Major Rostova had mapped the ship's security protocols and identified a recurring pattern in guard rotations that left certain sections momentarily unmonitored. She had also noted that the Thranxians, with their evolutionary history as hive builders, had poor spatial awareness in 3-dimensional environments outside their established pathways. Lena Hansen had cultivated a relationship with a young Thranxian scientist named Vexlor, who seemed genuinely curious about human culture. Through careful conversation, she extracted crucial information about Thranxian society, particularly its rigid hierarchy and growing internal tensions between traditional military leadership and the emerging scientific caste. Dr. Sharma had achieved perhaps the most dangerous breakthrough. She had begun to access Thranxian computer networks. Their quantum encryption was formidable, but their security protocols assumed challenges from races with similar computational logic. Human approaches to problem-solving, particularly Sharma's innovative algorithms, followed pathways the Thranxians had never anticipated. Using a medical diagnostic terminal left accessible during examinations, she had established limited access to the ship's secondary systems. Nothing critical yet. Environmental controls, maintenance scheduling, crew duty rosters, but enough to begin planning a coordinated resistance. Through their improvised communication system, the 4 women shared their discoveries and formulated a plan. But they needed to get a message to Earth, to let humanity know they were alive and to share what they had learned about their captors. Dr. Thorne found the solution. The Thranxians regularly transmitted large data packets toward their home systems. Scientific reports, status updates, and cultural information downloaded from Earth's internet. These transmissions used targeted tachyon bursts, faster-than-light communications that the Thranxians believed impossible for humans to detect or interpret. But Dr. Thorne, with Dr. Sharma's computational assistance, identified a way to piggyback a simple coded message within the stream, one that would appear as mere background noise to Thranxian systems, but would stand out to Earth scientists specifically looking for anomalies. During her next examination session, while Thranxian scientists were distracted by an apparent anomalous reaction to a standard test, Dr. Thorne accessed their equipment and inserted the message. A simple series of pulses hidden within the tachyon stream, directed toward Earth. It contained compressed information on Thranxian biology, technology vulnerabilities, and the Void Render's location within Saturn's rings. The message also included 4 words that would galvanize humanity's response. We are still fighting. 9 months after the abductions, Earth's first dedicated defense fleet was ready. 8 vessels, constructed in orbit using technology that represented quantum leaps beyond humanity's previous capabilities. They incorporated elements reverse-engineered from the alien traces found at abduction sites and theoretical advancements that had previously existed only on drawing boards. The flagship, EDF Prometheus, carried General Vance himself. As the fleet prepared to depart Earth orbit, communications officers detected something extraordinary, a signal of non-human origin, embedded within what appeared to be an alien transmission directed away from our solar system. When decoded, the message electrified the EDF command. Not only were the abducted women alive, but they had provided crucial intelligence on their captors, now identified as the Thranxian Empire, and the capabilities of their vessel, the Void Render. Most importantly, they had identified exploitable weaknesses. The Thranxians, for all their technological advancement, had grown complacent. Their defenses were optimized against known threats. Energy weapons similar to their own, conventional explosives, radiation. They had never encountered an adversary who would approach warfare from completely different tactical and technological angles. General Vance immediately revised the mission parameters. What had been planned as primarily a reconnaissance operation with limited rescue capability now became a full military strike. The fleet accelerated towards Saturn at previously unimaginable speeds, powered by new fusion drives that had been developed in secret for decades and perfected in the crucible of necessity. Admiral Krell was growing increasingly uncomfortable with the human specimens. Initial data had been fascinating. Their adaptability, problem-solving capabilities, and social cooperation exceeded all predictions. But as the months passed, he sensed something his rational mind rejected, but his instincts screamed. These primitives were planning something. Security incidents throughout the ship had increased by 23%. Minor system malfunctions occurred with unusual frequency, and the behavior of the specimens, while outwardly compliant, showed subtle patterns that disturbed him. Increase security on the specimens, he ordered his chief of security. Double the guard rotation and implement random scan patterns. Is that necessary, Admiral? The security chief asked. They are securely contained, and our stealth systems remain uncompromised. Earth has shown no awareness of our presence. Krell's mandibles clicked in irritation. Do not underestimate these creatures. There is something aberrant about their thought patterns. They should have accepted their situation by now, yet I sense continued resistance. As you wish, Admiral. However, the Science Division has requested reducing security measures to facilitate more comprehensive testing. They believe the specimens would provide more valuable data in a less restrictive environment. Krell hissed. The ongoing tension between military and science castes was a persistent irritant. The specimens remain under military jurisdiction. Remind Science Division Director Zeldar that this mission operates under my authority. As the security chief departed, Krell turned to the observation feeds showing each of the 4 humans in their quarters. They appear to be doing nothing unusual. The genetic scientist was reading material provided by her Thranxian counterparts. The military officer was engaging in some form of physical exercise. The diplomat was conversing with a junior scientist, and the technology expert appeared to be resting. Yet Krell couldn't shake his growing unease. Perhaps, he thought, it was time to conclude this study and return to the Empire. The data collected was already substantial, and his instincts, honed through centuries of military service, were rarely wrong. He was about to call the bridge to order a departure preparation when alarms suddenly blared throughout the ship. "Admiral," his communications officer's voice came through the ship-wide system. "Multiple unknown vessels approaching at high velocity from Earth orbit. They will reach Saturn space within hours." Krell's compound eyes widened in shock. "Impossible. Earth has no such capability." But the tactical display confirmed it. 8 vessels of unfamiliar design, moving at speeds that should have been beyond human technology, approaching on a direct course toward their location in Saturn's rings. "How were they able to detect us?" Krell demanded, rushing to the bridge. "Our cloaking field is operating at full capacity." The science officer looked up from her instruments, antennae quivering with confusion. "Unknown, Admiral. They appear to be tracking our exact position despite the cloaking field." Krell's mind raced. Had the humans developed technology capable of detecting their presence so quickly, or had they somehow been compromised from within? His gaze turned to the internal security feeds again, studying the 4 specimens with new suspicion. "Prepare for combat operations," he ordered. "Launch fighter squadrons and bring main weapons online. If these humans want to see the might of the Thranxian Empire, we shall oblige them." As the massive battleship hummed to life, its weapons systems charging and defense shields strengthening, Krell felt a strange sensation he had not experienced in centuries, a flutter of genuine concern. These humans had surprised him once with their detection capabilities. What other surprises might they have prepared? The Earth Defense Force fleet approached Saturn with all sensors focused on the anomaly within the rings. Thanks to the information provided by the abducted women, they knew what to look for: specific gravitational and radiation signatures that betrayed the presence of the cloaked Thranxian vessel. On the bridge of the Prometheus, General Vance addressed his command staff. "The Thranxians have detected our approach and are preparing defensive measures. According to the intelligence provided by our people inside, their technology relies heavily on energy shielding and directed particle weapons. They have never encountered our particular approach to warfare." He nodded to his tactical officer. "Commence Operation Thunderstrike." Across the fleet, specially designed electromagnetic pulse weapons powered up. Not the crude EMPs of early 21st century Earth, but precisely tuned quantum disruptors designed to interfere with specific frequencies used in Thranxian shield harmonics. Simultaneously, hundreds of small, autonomous drones were launched, each barely larger than a basketball, but carrying powerful conventional explosives. "They'll expect energy weapons similar to their own," Vance explained. "They won't be prepared for swarming tactics with physically delivered explosives. Their point defense systems are designed to track larger, faster objects." The EDF fleet split into 3 groups as they entered the Saturn system, executing a complex maneuver that would bring them at the Thranxian vessel from multiple vectors. The Prometheus led the main battle group directly toward the target, while lighter vessels swung wide to attack from flank positions. Inside the Void Render, the 4 women recognized the alarms for what they were. Earth had come for them. The moment they had been preparing for had arrived. In her quarters, Dr. Thorne activated the bioelectronic disruptor she had painstakingly constructed from modified medical equipment. The device, small enough to fit in her palm, emitted a signal that interfered with the Thranxians' semi-biological computing systems. Not enough to shut them down completely, but sufficient to introduce subtle errors and delays. Major Rostova was ready when her guard rotation changed, leaving a momentary gap in surveillance. With precise movements honed through months of secret practice, she disabled the door mechanism and slipped into the corridor, heading toward the section where Lena Hansen was held. Dr. Sharma, who had gained the most access to Thranxian systems, executed her part of the plan. Through her limited terminal access, she initiated a series of minor but strategically placed system overloads throughout the ship. Nothing critical enough to trigger immediate lockdown, but sufficient to divide attention and resources as the external attack began. Lena Hansen, meanwhile, engaged her Thranxian scientist contact, Vexlor, in intense conversation. "Your admiral has led you into a conflict you cannot win," she told him urgently. "Humans do not surrender when our people are taken. The fleet approaching now is just the beginning." Vexlor's antennae quivered with distress. "This is madness. You are a pre-interstellar species. How could you possibly challenge the Empire?" "Because you gave us no choice," Lena replied. "And because you made a fundamental miscalculation. You judged our technology without understanding our adaptability and resolve." As they spoke, Major Rostova appeared at the door, having neutralized 2 guards en route. "Time to go," she said to Lena, tossing her a weapon taken from one of the guards. Vexlor stepped back in alarm, but did not immediately signal for help. The young scientist had developed genuine respect for these humans and had privately questioned the ethics of their captivity. "What are you doing?" "Creating a diversion," Rostova replied coolly. "Your ship is under attack from our fleet. We're going to ensure it succeeds." Outside the Void Render, the battle had begun in earnest. The Thranxian vessel had finally become fully visible as it powered up its weapons systems, abandoning stealth for combat capability. It was an awesome sight, a massive, dark vessel over 2 kilometers long, with organic-looking curves and protrusions that housed various weapons emplacements. The first volley from the Thranxian ship was devastating. Beams of concentrated particles that sliced through space toward the approaching Earth vessels. But the EDF ships executed precise, evasive maneuvers, their hulls incorporating advanced ablative materials specifically designed to dissipate such energy. General Vance watched calmly as the tactical display showed the battle unfolding according to plan. "Execute Phase 2, he ordered. The smaller EDF vessels launched their drone swarms, thousands of tiny, autonomous weapons that accelerated toward the Thranxian ship. The Void Render's point defense systems activated, destroying hundreds with pinpoint energy bursts, but there were simply too many targets. The drones that survived impacted against the Thranxian energy shields, their conventional explosives detonating in precise, synchronized patterns. Individually, none could breach the powerful shields. Collectively, their precisely timed detonations created resonance patterns that stressed the shield generators beyond their design parameters. Inside the Void Render, Admiral Krell watched in disbelief as shield strength indicators fluctuated wildly. "Impossible," he muttered. "Their weapons are primitive explosives. They cannot affect our quantum shields." "Sir," his tactical officer reported urgently, "they're attacking in coordinated wave patterns. The resonance is creating harmonic disruptions in our shield matrix." Before Krell could respond, a new alarm sounded, internal this time. "Security breach in detention section. The specimens have escaped." Krell's compound eyes narrowed as the pieces fell into place. The humans had coordinated this, the external attack and the internal insurrection. Somehow, they had communicated with Earth despite all precautions. "Lock down all critical systems," he ordered. "Deploy security teams to recapture the specimens. They must not be allowed to reach sensitive areas." But even as he spoke, more system failures were cascading throughout the ship. Environmental controls in non-essential areas were shutting down. Navigation sensors were reporting conflicting data. Communication between sections was becoming erratic. The 4 escaped humans had split into 2 teams. Major Rostova and Lena Hansen headed toward the hangar bay, where smaller Thranxian vessels might provide an escape option. Dr. Thorne and Dr. Sharma made for the central computing core, where they could cause maximum disruption. Vexlor, the young Thranxian scientist, made a decision that would forever mark him as either a traitor or visionary among his people. Instead of reporting the escape immediately, he provided Lena with his access codes. "The military caste has led us into stagnation," he told her quietly. "Perhaps this conflict will force the change many of us have sought." As Dr. Thorne and Dr. Sharma reached a secondary computer access terminal, they plugged in the device they had constructed from various medical and diagnostic equipment. Dr. Sharma's fingers flew across the alien interface, now familiar after months of covert study. "I'm in," she announced after tense moments. "Accessing primary defensive controls now." Dr. Thorne kept watch, the bioelectronic disruptor active in her hand. "How long?" 2 minutes to override the security protocols. Another 3 to implement the changes. Sharma worked with intense focus. "If this works, we'll create a localized failure in their shield matrix, just enough for the EDF weapons to penetrate." Outside, the battle reached new intensity. The Thranxian fighters, sleek, insectoid craft piloted by the Empire's elite, engaged the larger Earth vessels, expecting easy victories against such primitive opponents. Instead, they encountered adversaries who fought with unexpected tactics and technologies. EDF ships launched what appeared to be conventional missiles, which the Thranxian fighters easily evaded. But when the missiles suddenly split apart mid-flight, releasing clouds of microscopic carbon filaments, the Thranxians found their craft's sensitive sensor arrays blinded and their engine intakes clogged with material their filters never anticipated. On the Prometheus, General Vance received the communication he'd been waiting for, a brief, encoded burst from within the Void Render. "They've succeeded," he announced to his bridge crew. "Target these coordinates with all quantum disruptors." The EDF fleet's main weapons, hastily developed based on theoretical physics that had been considered impractical just a year earlier, powered up simultaneously. They didn't fire beams or projectiles, but rather created focused distortions in space-time itself, temporarily altering the fundamental physical constants within a narrowly defined area. When these distortions struck the Void Render at the precise coordinates provided by Dr. Sharma, they encountered a localized weakness in the shield matrix. For a fraction of a second, the laws of physics within that small section of the massive ship changed. Matter that relied on specific quantum relationships for stability suddenly found those relationships altered. Molecular bonds weakened. Energy conduits that should have contained massive power loads suddenly couldn't. The result was catastrophic for the Thranxian vessel. A cascade of explosions rippled along its port side as weapons systems overloaded and structural integrity fields collapsed. The mighty ship listed heavily, its graceful form now marred by multiple breach points venting atmosphere and debris. On the bridge, Admiral Krell fought to maintain control as systems failed around him. Reroute power to secondary shields. Launch all remaining fighters. But his commands were met with increasing difficulty as the ship's semi-biological computing network struggled against both battle damage and the internal sabotage orchestrated by Dr. Sharma. Then the bridge doors burst open, and Krell found himself staring at 2 of the escaped specimens, the military officer and the diplomat, both armed with Thranxian weapons. "Admiral Krell," Major Rostova said calmly, her weapon aimed steadily at his center mass. "Your ship is crippled, your fighters are being destroyed, and Earth forces will board within minutes. I suggest you consider surrender." Krell's mandibles clicked in fury and disbelief. Surrender? To primitives? The Thranxian Empire does not surrender. Lena Hansen stepped forward. Then the Thranxian Empire will learn a costly lesson today. Look around you, Admiral. Your assumptions about human capability have already been proven wrong. How many more of your crew must die before you accept reality? For the first time in his centuries-long life, Admiral Krell faced a situation for which his training and experience had not prepared him. The unthinkable had happened. A pre-interstellar species had not only detected their presence and mounted a counterattack, but had succeeded in crippling a Thranxian capital ship. More alarmingly, the human vessels were now maneuvering alongside the Void Render, attaching themselves to breach points. Boarding actions were imminent. The Thranxian Empire had not faced actual boarding combat in millennia. Their technological superiority had made such primitive tactics obsolete. With a final surge of defiance, Krell reached for his sidearm, only to find Major Rostova's reaction time faster than he had calculated possible. Her shot struck with precision, disabling rather than killing. As the mighty Admiral collapsed to the deck, Lena Hansen activated the ship's communication system using the codes Vexlore had provided. Attention all Thranxian personnel. Your ship is disabled and your admiral is in custody. Earth forces are boarding. Any further resistance will result in unnecessary casualties. Stand down and prepare to be evacuated. Throughout the massive ship, confused and frightened Thranxian crews, many of whom had never seen actual combat, received the message. With their rigid hierarchical structure disrupted and facing an enemy whose capabilities had clearly been underestimated, resistance crumbled rapidly. When General Vance led the first boarding party onto the Void Render, he found Major Rostova and Lena Hansen in control of the bridge, with Admiral Kvrel secured as a prisoner. Dr. Thorne and Dr. Sharma had been equally successful, maintaining control of the ship's computing core and preventing any attempt to initiate self-destruct protocols. The Thranxian Empire's first military defeat in centuries was complete. The mighty Void Render, pride of their fleet, captured by a species they had dismissed as primitives. As Earth forces secured the vessel and evacuated Thranxian survivors to detention facilities, analysis of the ship's database revealed alarming information. The Thranxian Empire was vast, controlling thousands of star systems. The Void Render, while impressive, was merely one of hundreds of similar capital ships. "They'll come for us," General Vance noted grimly as he reviewed the information with the four women whose courage and ingenuity had made victory possible. "This defeat will not go unanswered." Dr. Thorne nodded. "But we've gained time and technology. Every system on this ship represents advancement we might not have achieved for decades. And we have leverage," added Lena Hansen, gesturing toward the captured admiral. "Kvrel is one of their highest-ranking military leaders. His capture will send shockwaves through their command structure." Major Rostova's expression remained grim. "We should prepare for their retaliation immediately. Transfer all usable technology from this vessel and then position it as a defensive platform in Saturn orbit. We need to establish a perimeter defense system throughout the solar system." News of the astonishing victory spread across Earth like wildfire. The four women who had been abducted were hailed as heroes of unprecedented magnitude. Their intelligence, courage, and resourcefulness had not only ensured their own survival, but had given humanity its first interstellar victory. Crowds gathered in major cities worldwide, celebrating what was quickly being called the Saturn Triumph. Political leaders who had once squabbled over trivial issues now stood united on global broadcasts, pledging continued cooperation in the face of the Thranxian threat. The Void Render itself became humanity's most valuable asset. Teams of scientists and engineers worked around the clock to understand and adapt its technology. Dr. Sharma led efforts to decipher its computer systems, while Dr. Thorne focused on understanding Thranxian biology and potential vulnerabilities. Major Rostova coordinated with military leaders to develop new tactics based on Thranxian weaknesses, and Lena Hansen prepared for the diplomatic challenges ahead. Meanwhile, in the detention facility constructed specifically to hold the Thranxian prisoners, Admiral Kvrel seethed with rage and humiliation. When Lena Hansen came to interview him 3 weeks after the battle, he initially refused to acknowledge her presence. "Your silence serves no purpose, Admiral," she said calmly. "Your empire will already know of your defeat through the loss of communication with the Void Render. They will be preparing a response. The question is whether that response will result in more unnecessary deaths on both sides." Krell's compound eyes fixed on her with intense hatred. "You cannot comprehend the force that will descend upon your world, human. The Empire has conquered species far more advanced than yours. This temporary advantage you've gained will mean nothing when the Imperial fleet arrives. And when will that be, Admiral? Your ship's databases suggest the nearest Thranxian outpost is over 30 light years away. Even with your FTL technology, that means months before a response fleet could reach us. Months during which we will continue to analyze and adapt your technology." For the first time, a flicker of uncertainty crossed Krell's alien features. These humans learned and adapted at rates he had never witnessed in any species. What might they accomplish in months of focused effort? The Empire has existed for millennia, he said finally. It has faced and overcome challenges far greater than a single primitive world. Lena leaned forward. Perhaps, but I don't believe the Empire has ever encountered a species quite like humanity before. We were peaceful explorers until you chose to make us enemies. As she departed, Krell found himself troubled by a new emotion, doubt. The rigid certainty that had defined his centuries of service to the Empire was cracking, replaced by questions he had never before considered. 2 months after the Saturn battle, the first response from the Thranxian Empire arrived, not in the form of warships, but as a transmission detected by the newly established Deep Space Monitoring Network Earth had created using adapted Thranxian technology. The message was brief and formal. The Imperial Thranxian Council requested direct communication regarding recent incidents and the status of Admiral Krell and the Voidrender. The tone was neither overtly hostile nor friendly, carefully neutral diplomatic language that disguised whatever emotions might lie beneath. Earth's response was equally measured. A communication link was established, and representatives of the newly formed Earth Diplomatic Corps, with Lena Hansen in a leading role, prepared to engage with one of the galaxy's oldest civilizations. The first direct conversation between human and Thranxian leadership revealed much about the internal politics of the Empire. The Thranxian representatives included both military and scientific leaders, who frequently displayed subtle signs of disagreement even as they maintained a united front. The actions of Admiral Krell were not authorized by the Imperial Council, stated High Counselor Zextarn, a Thranxian whose elaborate exoskeletal decorations indicated high civilian rank. His mission of scientific observation exceeded its parameters when he ordered the collection of specimens without proper protocols. You expect us to believe that the abduction of our people was the unauthorized action of a single commander? General Vance responded skeptically. A commander in control of one of your most powerful warships. The Thranxian Empire is vast, replied Fleet Commander of Corps, the military counterpart to Zex Tarn. Our command structure necessarily grants significant autonomy to field commanders. Admiral Cavrelis. Enthusiasm for his mission led to regrettable choices. Lena Hansen, detecting the political maneuvering behind these statements, intervened. Regardless of authorization, the fact remains that citizens of Earth were abducted, our sovereignty was violated, and we were forced to defend ourselves. The question before us now is how we proceed from this point. The negotiations that followed were complex and often tense. The Thranxians initially demanded the immediate return of Admiral Krell, the Voidrender, and all captured technology. Earth countered with demands for reparations, technology transfers, and security guarantees. What became increasingly clear was that the Thranxian Empire, while immensely powerful, was not the monolithic entity it first appeared. The military defeat at Saturn had exacerbated existing tensions between conservative military leaders and the more progressive scientific caste. Some factions within the Empire viewed the conflict with Earth as an opportunity to force needed reforms. Others saw it as a humiliation that must be avenged. After weeks of negotiation, a preliminary agreement was reached. Admiral Krell would be returned to Thranxian custody, but would face their equivalent of a court-martial for exceeding his authority. The Voidrender, too damaged for practical repair, would remain with Earth as compensation for the violations of sovereignty. Most significantly, a formal treaty would establish Earth as a recognized independent power, with defined boundaries and non-aggression guarantees. Not everyone on either side was satisfied with these terms. Among humans, many felt the Thranxians had escaped too lightly for their actions. Within the Empire, hardliners considered any concession to primitives unacceptable. The official treaty signing was scheduled to take place on neutral territory, a space station hastily constructed in orbit between Earth and Mars, using both human and Thranxian technology. Security was unprecedented, with both Earth and Thranxian forces maintaining careful watch. On the day of the ceremony, As representatives from both civilizations gathered, reports arrived of unusual activity among the more distant Thranxian vessels. General Vance immediately ordered heightened alert status for the EDF fleet. "Something's wrong," he murmured to Major Rostova, who had been appointed as head of security for the Earth delegation. "The Thranxian diplomatic vessel is transmitting unusual energy signatures." Before she could respond, alarms blared throughout the station. "Multiple Thranxian warships decloaking," reported the tactical officer. "They're moving into attack positions." On the main diplomatic deck, the Thranxian representatives showed clear signs of confusion, some appearing genuinely surprised, others less so. Fleet Commander of Corps S. Anteni went rigid with what humans had learned to recognize as anger. "What is the meaning of this?" demanded Lena Hansen as the diplomatic chamber locked down automatically. High Counselor Zextarn's compound eyes flicked rapidly between his fellow Thranxians. "This was not authorized by the full council," he insisted. "Someone has." His words were cut short as the communication system activated, displaying the image of another Thranxian, one whose elaborate military decorations exceeded even Krell's. "I am Grand Admiral Vrakshin of the Imperial First Fleet," the figure announced. "The treaty negotiations are hereby suspended by Imperial decree. Earth forces will surrender the Void Render and all prisoners immediately, or face the consequences of defying the Empire." Fleet Commander of Corps stepped forward, his posture radiating shock. "Grand Admiral, the Imperial Council has not authorized military action. This treaty has been approved by. The Council has been temporarily relieved of authority in this matter," Vrakshin replied coldly. "The military caste will not allow the Empire to be humiliated by primitives. You have 1 Earth hour to comply." As the transmission ended, chaos erupted on the diplomatic deck. The Earth delegation was immediately evacuated toward their shuttles as Thranxian representatives argued violently among themselves. "This is a military coup," Zextarn shouted to Lena Hansen as she departed. "Not all Thranxians support this action. The science caste will resist." Aboard the Prometheus, General Vance assessed the situation grimly. The Thranxian forces that had decloaked outnumbered the EDF fleet significantly, at least 15 capital ships and numerous smaller vessels. "We can't win a direct engagement against those numbers," Major Rostova stated, studying the tactical display. "No," Vance agreed, "but neither will we surrender. Alert all Earth defenses and prepare contingency Omega. If they want to fight, we'll give them one they'll never forget." Contingency Omega was the most desperate of Earth's defensive plans, one created for precisely this scenario. Throughout the solar system, hidden installations powered up, ready to implement technologies and tactics that had been developed by studying Thranxian weaknesses. As the 1-hour deadline approached, tension throughout the solar system reached its peak. Earth populations were moved to underground shelters. Military forces stood at highest alert. The EDF fleet maintained position, clearly outmatched but unwavering. Then, 16 minutes before the deadline expired, something unexpected happened. 3 of the Thranxian vessels suddenly changed position, moving to form a line between the Earth fleet and the rest of the Thranxian forces. Their weapons powered down, and a transmission was broadcast on all frequencies. "This is Science Director Zeldar of the research vessel Quantum Seeker," announced a Thranxian voice. "The actions of Grand Admiral Vrakshin violate Imperial law and Council authority. The science caste will not support an illegal military action against a species seeking peaceful relations." What followed was unprecedented in Thranxian history, a division of their forces along caste lines. As Grand Admiral Vrakshin ordered his loyal ships to target the traitors, other vessels began to break formation, some powering down weapons, others moving to join the protective line. The Thranxian Empire, for the first time in millennia, was experiencing open internal conflict. The rigid hierarchical structure that had defined their civilization was fracturing, and the catalyst was humanity, a species they had initially dismissed as primitive. Seeing the confusion in the Thranxian ranks, General Vance made a bold decision. "All ships, hold position. Do not engage unless directly attacked. This is their fight. For tense hours, the human forces watched as the Thraxians engaged in intense ship-to-ship communication. No weapons were fired, but the positioning of vessels made clear the division of loyalties. Eventually, Grand Admiral Vraxion's flagship and its closest allies moved away, creating distance while maintaining a threatening posture. Science Director Zeldar requested to resume negotiations, this time with additional Thraxian representatives present via holographic projection, members of the Imperial Council itself, speaking from their distant homeworld. The actions of Grand Admiral Vraxion do not represent the will of the Empire, stated Elder Counselor Theskar, whose ancient exoskeleton bore the marks of centuries of service. He and his supporters have been ordered to stand down pending review. And if they refuse, asked Lena Hansen, then they are in rebellion against the Empire, replied Theskar gravely. A situation without precedent in our history. The negotiations resumed with a new tone, one of genuine respect from the Thraxian side. The conflict with Earth had exposed fault lines within their society that could no longer be ignored. The military caste traditional dominance was being questioned openly, with the scientific caste gaining unprecedented influence. A new treaty was drafted, more favorable to Earth than the previous version. Beyond recognizing Earth's sovereignty, it established formal diplomatic relations, limited technology exchange, and cultural connection. Most importantly, it acknowledged humanity as equals, a status rarely granted to any species by the ancient empire. Grand Admiral Vraxion and his loyalist faction did not immediately submit to imperial authority. They retreated to the outer solar system, maintaining a threatening presence while issuing demands for the restoration of traditional values and military primacy. The Thraxian Empire stood at a crossroads. For millennia, it had expanded through superior technology and military might. Now, forced to confront a species that had overcome those advantages through adaptability and cooperation, fundamental questions about their society's structure and values could no longer be avoided. As the diplomatic vessels departed Earth orbit, carrying both the signed treaty and the complex internal conflicts back to Thraxian space, humanity too faced a transformed future. The universe had suddenly become much larger and more complex than anyone had imagined just 1 year earlier. In a private meeting after the treaty signing, the 4 women whose abduction had triggered this interstellar crisis reflected on the extraordinary turn of events. They thought they were studying us, Dr. Thorne observed, but in reality, we were revealing something crucial about them. Their society had become rigid, hierarchical, resistant to change. Much like many human societies throughout history, Lena Hansen added. Perhaps that's the true lesson here, that intelligence, wherever it evolves, faces similar challenges. The tension between stability and adaptation, between tradition and progress. Major Rostova, ever practical, focused on the immediate future. We've gained a temporary advantage through surprise and their internal divisions. But we cannot become complacent. The galaxy is clearly filled with powerful civilizations. We must continue to strengthen our defenses. Dr. Sharma nodded thoughtfully. And yet, I'm optimistic. We've proven that humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology or military capacity, but our ability to cooperate, to adapt, to find creative solutions when faced with seemingly impossible challenges. As they spoke, far beyond Saturn, the Void Render, now partially repaired and repurposed as Earth's first true interstellar research vessel, prepared for its maiden voyage under human command. Its mission, to explore the nearby star systems with caution and curiosity, representing a humanity forever changed by its first encounter with galactic civilization. And deep in Thraxian space, Admiral Krell, awaiting his trial for the actions that had precipitated this crisis, reflected on the costly lesson he had learned. In his long military career, he had conquered many worlds and subjugated many species. But none had taught him what these humans had, that true strength lies not in technological superiority or military might, but in the resilience, adaptability, and unified purpose of species fighting for its future. The next time the Thraxian Empire encountered humans among the stars, it would be as equals, perhaps as allies, perhaps as rivals, but never again as mere specimens for study. And throughout the galaxy, as news of the events in the Sol system spread, other civilizations took note of the emerging species that had successfully challenged one of the oldest empires in known space. A new era had begun, not just for humanity, but for the galactic community itself. And it had all started with a fateful decision that would echo through Thraxian history for generations to come. The day they had captured human women and lived to regret it.